Hello and welcome to this edition of Exclusive Interview, coming to you from the studios of 84 TV Radio Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Stanley Bentu. Now, the presidential election of the United States of America is over, with former Vice President Joe Biden declared president-elect, and President Donald Trump declaring that the election was fraudulent and insisting that he was robbed. And this is despite him trailing by about 4 million popular votes. Now, is it necessary for a president to win an election while trailing by the popular vote? That's a critical question, and the answer to that is in how the United States of America runs its elections. Have a look at this report.
In the U.S. elections, candidates are elected directly by popular vote. But the president and vice president are not elected by citizens. Instead, they are chosen by electors through a process called the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a process and not a place. The Founding Fathers established it in the Constitution as a compromise between the election of the president by a vote in Congress and election by popular vote of qualified citizens. The Electoral College process consists of the selection of electors, the meeting of the electors where they vote for the president and vice president, and the counting of the electoral votes by the Congress. The Electoral College consists of 538 electors, of which include 100 senators and 435 representatives, which add up to 535. And the remaining 3 electors come from the 23rd Amendment ratified on 1961. A majority of 270 electoral votes and more is required to elect the president, and if no candidate is able to achieve an absolute majority, then a contingent election is held by the U.S. Congress to elect the president and vice president. During the general election, the citizens' vote help determine the state electors. Their vote tell the state which candidate they want the state to vote for at the meeting of the electors. The state uses the result of the general election, popular vote, to appoint their electors. The electors from each state gather and they vote for the president. The person who receives majority of the votes from the Electoral College becomes the president. Usually, electoral votes align with the popular vote in election, but a number of times, the person who took the White House did not receive the most popular votes. Critics argue that the Electoral College system is less than a direct popular vote. But does the college system violate the democratic principle of one person, one vote? On the show today, Ambassador Hassan Mohammed, who has served extensively in the United States, joins us to give a breakdown of the Electoral College system in the United States.
Welcome back. Joining me in the studio right now is someone who knows quite a lot about United States politics. His name is Ambassador Hassan Mohammed. Ambassador, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Stanley, and I want to seize this opportunity to congratulate you and to congratulate everybody in the organization for your 1-year anniversary.
Well,
you're doing
very
well.
Grateful for that.
Congratulations.
1 year, it has been quite a journey, but we're very pleased that we've come this far and happy that you're sharing in it.
All right.
So much has happened in the United States over the past few weeks, and I think learning from a democracy that's over 200 years old is never out of place. But a funny thing that Nigerians noticed during the election was that Americans do not elect their presidents directly. So what exactly is the Electoral College?
Good. The Electoral College was enunciated by the founders of the United States and enshrined in the American Constitution. And the sole aim of the Electoral College is to ensure everybody's participation, to guide against voter fraud, and to ensure governance is done on even keel for everybody's participation, and everybody should have a say in the government. And they do it in like this. The election for a president is done in 2 stages. The first stage is the general election. And in the general election, the vote is being cast for either of the 2 parties, or a Democrat or Republican or any other candidate, even independent candidates. So by that act, they elect what they call electors. They don't very much elect the president per se, but they elect the electors, 538 of them nationwide. So those 538, in the month, because the election is done in, the general election is done in November. That is the first Tuesday of November every election year. That's the election day in the United States. And there, for a candidate to qualify, you have to have 270 of the electors coming to your side. That is, by the time an election is done, is not necessarily the person that scores majority votes. Is not so. But the person that scores most of the electoral votes. So and those electors, they converge in December and formalize the election of the person that qualifies through the electoral college. That's what they call electoral, the system in America. And it has been in practice for since America was formed.
Since the start of
yes.
it. So it's interesting that a person does not get elected to the office of presidency until, officially at least, until the electors actually go and do their job in December.
That's right.
Okay, so why did the framers of the Constitution choose this method as opposed to just directly electing the president as is practiced in a lot of other countries, including Nigeria?
They had one fear. America was a colonial country, was a colonial estate of the British. And so many other European countries had a portion, one way or the other. You have the Northeast, they call them North England states, the West, the South, is a conglomeration of so many different states forming the United States, about 50 different states. So when they wanted to come up with the Constitution, they want everybody to participate. Everybody, they didn't want any voter fraud, and they didn't want people to be disenfranchised. So through this, they came up with that system. You have the general election, and there is something again. Let's say you take an example of Rhode Island. 2 people contested, Republican, Democrat. So whoever wins the majority of the votes after counting, he is allocated a particular number of votes. And the same applies to all the states. So, and it's expected that at the total end of the tally, you will score 270 that's what is accepted.
Okay.
And
So by the time you score 270,
You are all
there
right.
aren't enough electoral votes for your opponent
Exactly.
to score
Exactly.
to defeat you.
Yes, because if you take 538 total, 270 is a sizable number. Yes.
So we have something curious. There are certain states that seem to have more electors
Yes.
than others.
That's right.
So why do they decide to do that as opposed to just allocating the same number of electors for each state?
Yeah. You see, in the United States, you have each state produces a governor, and each state produces 2 senators regardless of your population. And
Which is similar to what we have in Nigeria.
here we have 3, but in America is 2. Is 2, and they don't have something like INEC here. The elections are done by states and is conducted under the office of Secretary of State of a particular state. Yes. So
And who is the Secretary of State?
appointed by the governor.
Okay.
Yes.
So
governor
the
office.
Secretary of State at the state level
Yes.
is different or performs a different function
Yes.
than the one that
the
is
national
appointed
level.
at the national level.
Exactly.
Okay. Because the U.S. Secretary of State is usually it's like a foreign secretary.
Correct.
Very influential position, but
Yes.
but he deals or she deals mostly with international matters.
That's true.
But the one within the states, you are telling me that their function is, or at least one of their functions is to
among
conduct
other things,
elections.
Yes, among other things they do, they conduct elections, and their announcement pertaining to their state's results of the election is sacrosanct. They always accept it.
So the U.S. does not have a national electoral
No,
body.
no, they
there,
don't.
there is no INEC or
No,
USI.
no, they don't. They don't. They don't.
Okay, well, there are other interesting things that we have. Very curious, like what happened the last time during the last election. We saw Donald Trump emerge as president, but Hillary Clinton won the popular vote
That's right.
by about 3 million.
The same with
We
Al
saw
Gore.
George W. Bush and Al Gore, that situation. As a matter of fact, in the U.S., it's happened a total of 5 times.
That's right.
Where a candidate scored lower votes, but emerged as president because he scored 470 electoral votes.
That's true.
So how democratic is this, really?
You see, they came up, I mean, they didn't want a situation where a particular region, because they are in majority, because they feel democracy should be every person's vote count. Okay? And they said, according to them, if they restrict their election and they centered it solely on majority carries the vote, that is kind of erroneous. They fear that. They don't feel like anyone that has...
would be fair.
Exactly. It wouldn't be fair. So
Because some states have larger populations,
Exactly.
so they don't want states with larger
Exactly.
populations to dominate and dictate
exactly
the
because,
politics.
Because individuals can stay, I mean, individual contestants or politicians, they could disregard other states and center on areas, population centers. And those ones will load it over the smaller states or states with smaller populations. So they want everybody to be to partake in the election. So they allocated, and the allocation of voters, thus the electorates, those that go the 538 number, they do it according to population. Yes, like California, New York, Texas, Florida will
Those
have
are large states with
Exactly.
large populations.
Exactly.
So they tend to have more electors?
Yes.
Okay.
Places like Rhode Island, like Maine, like Vermont, they are low populated states.
And therefore...
they have very less number of electors.
So I think the pattern is becoming a bit clear to me now.
Okay.
I mean, you may have more electors
Yes.
numerically,
Right.
but in those smaller states, you tend to have more electors per capita.
That's right.
Per individual. So that kind of balances out
That's true. Yes,
the,
because
the situation.
they feared that they don't want dominance. There are fundamental aspects of freedom and this and that they value very much, very high. So they don't want the founding fathers really worked, and so far it has worked for them.
And I would like to hear a lot more about that, but we do have to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll find out whether electors who are pledged to vote for a candidate are required by law to vote for that candidate. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Exclusive Interview. I'm still in the studio with Ambassador Hassan Mohammed, and we're looking at the Electoral College system of the United States of America. Americans apparently don't elect their presidents directly, but they do so through an Electoral College of electors who actually do the business in December. First Wednesday in December, was it?
I think, I don't know the exact date, but sometimes in maybe mid of December.
Mid-December.
Yeah,
So
but
we have some way to go
Exactly.
of that.
Exactly.
Now, these electors are called pledged delegates.
Yes.
And is there any law that says that they must vote for the candidate that they were pledged to vote for?
Of course, because if during the general election, a candidate A wins a particular state, they are obligated to allocate. That's why you see like Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden, he won so many states and they allocated those votes to him.
Again, a winner-takes-all
Yes,
situation.
yeah. And President Trump, he had, I think he has 213 or 214, and there are contested states anyway. He said
213, I
Yes.
think he is as at last count.
exactly.
All right,
And,
but why don't they allocate according to the quantity of votes that a candidate gets from a state, rather than this winner-takes-all approach? I mean,
no.
for instance, if Donald Trump wins 60% of the popular vote in a state, why doesn't he just get 60% of the electors instead of taking the
That is
whole
true.
thing?
That is true. There are some states that practice that, but they are
Oh,
not many.
okay.
Yeah, they are not many. They can. There
So
are
states are allowed to set their own rules.
Yeah, because you know, in America, it's like a federation, and the federating states have their own rules. So what might be acceptable in California will not be acceptable in Vermont. Yes, but you have also in a state you have Senate of that state, you have House of Representatives of that state, that you have Supreme Court of a particular state. But at the same time, all these things, you have them at the federal. Yes. So you have senator, but they said he's a federal senator. That's the gentleman in Washington, D.C. So you see, the federating states have their own laws differently from, but where the laws come in conflict, the federation laws takes effect.
I've been curious about the similarities and differences between the Nigerian presidential system and the one of the United States. Now, granted, we did seem to copy the American-style presidential system, but we tweaked ours a little bit. It's not an exact replica.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, there's some really, really deep differences, and some of these differences come from the history and the context within which these states were formed.
Yes.
For example, the United States, the Union, basically, these were units that were more or less sovereign countries of their own, so to speak, that came together to form the union.
That's right.
So it was out coming in to form a larger union. In Nigeria, it was different. We had regions, and then the military government decided to break them down into states. So it was larger lumps being subdivided into smaller units.
Yes.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nigeria is probably the only country in the world that refers to subnational units as states. Because in true definition, a state is actually a country. So the United States means united group of countries. But in Nigeria, a state does not exactly mean the same thing. A state is basically a province, isn't it?
That's true. But even in the United States, they have subsumed their independence to the federal. Exactly. So they take dictates, reasonable dictates, from the federal government in the United States. So there is not well pronounced, but the federal government also gives them certain liberties to perform a lot of functions, one of which is election. Yes.
So a U.S. president really has very little control over the outcome of the result. He does not appoint a chairman of any national electoral body. So it's what comes from the state that he is forced to accept.
Exactly, and they're very honest to a great extent. Yes.
So what happens, for instance, in a case like this, where we have the president basically rejecting the outcome of the election? So according to what I found out, this has practically never been done before. The loser usually calls to congratulate the winner, but we're seeing what is almost an anomaly right now.
Yeah, it has happened before in 1801 when President John Adams. He refused to congratulate that person, his William Jefferson, and he refused handover, basically. And when the time came, the people of the State House, comprising the security and civilians working there, they abandoned him and they moved to the side of the elected president. So he was sworn
establishing a new seat of government.
Yeah, and that's the end.
So is this something that could happen come January 20th, when the U.S. president, the next one, is supposed to be sworn in, assuming Donald Trump is unsuccessful in his legal bid, which a lot of analysts say is the most likely outcome?
Yeah. You see, he has embarked on legalities. And some states have thrown out most of the claims. And the reports we are having is that he went to court, but on flimsy, non-substantiated allegations. So the people are rational enough. Everything got to finish before the date of swearing in of a new president. If he's successful, maybe they may devise some other model to take care of the situation. But if things remain the same, or he's not successful, definitely they will get him out. And somebody will be sworn in, because the American system doesn't permit someone to constitute a nuisance to them. And also they don't, as they say, nature abhors vacuum. So they can't afford, because the United States is the most important country in the world, at least in the Western world. So if things are not done correctly and according to law, there will be chaos. So I don't think they will allow it to get to that extent. Yes.
Now, a lot of people believe that the American system will work out that it's a strong democracy with strong foundations, and probably things will go for the best. But that would not erase the stigma, would it? I mean, considering all of the angry tweets that the president has been sending out, sowing seeds of doubt over the credibility of the U.S. elections, how would this affect developing countries? Much like Nigeria, where irregular elections are a norm, and you have a generation of Nigerians that has grown up with these irregularities. How much faith are they going to have in democracy if the world's most famous democratic country has people, or, pulling up questions about its credibility?
Yeah, that is, you see, if by going to court and the court rules that Donald Trump is the right guy, he takes it. If they rule otherwise, he just have to take it as a given. There's no way he can say he won't back out of the White House.
But what effect would that have on the reputation of the United States as an ambassador or an advocate of democracy all over the world?
Yeah, you see,
the actions of President Trump.
Yeah, you see, actions of individuals, especially of presidents and elected officials, they are individuals. They are unpredictable, and the person of Donald Trump is a very impulsive and very strong personality. So by the time the law takes its course, anybody emulating him is just doing so for his own sake. Yeah. So there will be impact, there will be this thing, but with time, those things will be history. Just like President John Adams tried to
fail. Well, we look forward to the United States pulling through this. It's a country that is too important to democracy to collapse under its weight.
No. It won't collapse.
Right.
Yeah, it won't.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and quite enlightening.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We will be right back. Don't go away. Well, very enlightening conversation that we've had there with Ambassador Hassan Mohammed. And he opened our eyes to how the Electoral College votes. But the interesting thing about this college is that it's one of the most contentious things about United States politics. Should it stay? Should it go? Should it be modified? Well, these are questions that will probably be answered in the coming years. And that's it on Exclusive Interview. Until we come your way again next time, thank you for stopping by.